So, what do a pint of beer, saying the wrong name during sex, and solving an unsolved murder all have in common? No idea, right? Us either. Just kidding, but we've got your attention now, right? And we also promised you that this was not going to be just another money mindset talk. Okay? So before we explain all of those things and dive in a little bit deeper, we just want to set out some of the basics.
Yes, we do. And Mark Twain once said, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." Sharing this because when you listen to, whether it's us speak or any of the speakers at this event or any other event, you have a tendency, we all do, to say things like, "Oh, I totally agree with what they're saying," or "I'm not sure if I agree with that." And either way, it's problematic because what the brain does as we're evaluating what we're hearing is it puts things into boxes. The box of, "I already know this, so I don't need to pay attention," or the box of, "I don't think I agree with that, so I don't need to pay attention to that either." So we're going to suggest that for this talk, for every talk, that you start with a child's mind, you clear the slate, and you just approach everything that we're going to share, and for the rest of the day from a state of curiosity. So, as Kelley said, this is called Not Another Mindset Talk, because when Rena said, "Can you guys talk about like mindset and stuff? I love when you go there," I was like, another mindset talk, Rena? Really? But no, listen, like we're big fans of mindset, obviously. We teach evolved neuro-linguistic programming. We have a transformational coaching company, so mindset is a big, big deal. And a lot of the mindset stuff out there just scratches the surface. And, we hear things like, you just need to get into the vibration. You just need to visualize more. You need to picture it, affirm it, let it happen. And, that's supposed to change our lives. But how many of you know that it's sometimes not that easy? Right? So, yes, mindset, super, super important, but so is going deeper. And that's what we want to do today. So we're going to use the template of the format of ask, believe, receive, because we've all heard that before, yes? And we're going to start with that. So ask. This is supposed to be the easy part, yeah? We're just supposed to ask for what we want, put it out there. It's not that easy for some people. I mean, some people are so completely disconnected from their own truth that they have no idea what they really want. Others know what they want, but they're afraid to say it because there's so many beliefs and so many judgments and so many areas of conditioning from childhood that we don't know how to ask for it. Or you ask for something so big and extraordinary that you're completely incongruent with it that it's hard to even figure out what steps to take. Okay, so asking is not just as simple as asking.
Mm-hmm. And then there's believing. You will get it when you believe that it's true, that you can have it all. But here's the thing, then we catch ourselves going, "I believe it, I believe it, I believe it." But the challenge is asking ourselves, do I really? And do I feel that with every cell of my body? We know, so many of us here have learned about manifestation, and we know the importance of matching our frequency with our beliefs in order to obtain what we want. And all of that is true. But the challenge is, it's kind of like, it's like pregnancy. It can't be just a little bit pregnant, right? You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. And so the same thing happens with beliefs. Beliefs need to be completely congruent with who we are and also really integrated with the cells of our being. We really need to know that that is true. Here's how it shows up for me. My children think I have magical powers because whenever we go to a mall or to a doctor's appointment, I always have the ability of getting the front parking spot. My husband looks at me and just shakes his head every time it happens. "How did you do that?" Well, here's the thing. I have no beliefs about whether or not I am worthy and deserving of having that spot. I have never been assaulted while parking my car. I have never thought I shouldn't be able to park here because of my gender. At no point have I ever received any public shaming because of where I park. And so I have very little attachment to it, and it results in instant manifestation for me. The challenge is that that isn't always true for everything. When we set our sights on manifesting a 7-figure business, that was a lot more difficult than parking a car because as we worked through it, we had to excavate beliefs, programming, childhood trauma. There were some tears.
Just a few.
Yep. Yeah. And it really meant that we needed to continue to move forward on that. But here's the thing, the other thing that we always want to acknowledge when it comes to the personal development space or the coaching space in general. Beliefs also include societal beliefs that we all carry. We have systems of oppression that impact the global majority. So if we're not also considering the beliefs that created those systems, we're missing a big part of the impact that that has on people. And not only that, but it runs the potential of doing harm. So beliefs also include what we've created through our beliefs, through the collective consciousness. That can include beliefs about superiority, beliefs about inferiority, and those also get handed down generation after generation.
They do, and so does our trauma. And by the way, just a warning, we are the people who talk about trauma. We promise, we do it. We talk about trauma a lot because we all have it, and especially, the world that we're living in right now, we can see it everywhere. And all of this impacts the ability to manifest. And sometimes this idea of belief can be almost punitive, like just believe harder. I didn't believe enough, right? So we're going to get back to beliefs in a minute, but this third piece I want to talk about, and that's receiving. Please raise your hand if you consider yourself to be a really good giver. You're a good giver, you have a big heart, yes. No surprises here, because in a community like Speaker Slam, very much like our Avalon community, we have heart-centered, mission-driven, impact-driven people. I always say I only want to work with people that I can end the call with, I love you, and have that be reciprocated. So we've established we're all good givers, but raise your hand if you are just as good at receiving. Right, so a few, and congratulations, because clearly you've done some work. And for the rest of you, congratulations, because clearly you're human, right? But receiving is fundamentally important and really a huge part of our why. Because when we look at the world, there is no shortage of abundance out there. But we've got like a top 1% of the 1% hoarding power, hoarding abundance, and we need to see that redistributed. We need to see it redistributed into the hands of people like us, right? Because we are the ones that are going to change the world when we have that and when we've tapped into it. And so that's why we want to do this today.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you.
The challenge is, it's really about what's happening for us when it comes to our beliefs on a conscious and unconscious level. I think we had a couple speakers speaking about this earlier, but just to reiterate, when we start to look at how we want to receive, what our mindset is around receiving, we need to do a check on where we're at. So I want to talk about the conscious mind. The conscious mind, it's like us from the neck up. It's only about 10% of who we are. And every day we might decide that we want to do something different. The challenge is that sometimes we continue to repeat patterns because there are things that are left unresolved in the unconscious, the other 90%. So any time that we set our sights on a goal and we want to move forward to that goal and we decide tomorrow's going to be a new day and we find ourselves repeating those same patterns, it starts to put us in a position to ask the question, what am I holding unconsciously? Here's how it showed up for me. I spent 2 decades in a not-for-profit organization. I loved my job. I loved the work that I was doing. I loved the community that I was serving. When I decided to leave that position to go into my own coaching practice and later into training, I really wanted to succeed. I was ready for success and growth and to thrive, not just to survive. And what happened for me was that the phone stopped ringing. The money didn't come in the way that I had anticipated. Laura and I started working together, and we did a weekend program called Awaken Your True Self. And that weekend, I had hustled. I had 10 participants that I had coming to the event. I had sold tickets to them. Not bad for the first event.
Pretty good.
I think so. and what happened was 48 hours before that event began, every single one of the people that I had met with to come to the event bailed. Yes.
Hey, they had good reasons.
Absolutely. The reasons, yes, they all made sense. Here's what we know. Once is a coincidence, twice is a pattern, 3 times, 3 of them had canceled, would have been a problem. 10, I'm stopping and I'm going, what does this have to do with me? What is coming up for me? And so what I did, I picked up the phone because I couldn't figure it out. I picked up the phone, called Laura, and said, I need a session. I need to figure this out. Laura walked me through a few things, and one of them being a modality to help me release what was coming up. And what was the belief that was so deeply ingrained? I am not for profit. Right?
Right?
Yes. So when Laura walked me through that modality to release that belief, the most phenomenal miracle happened. For our next 2-day weekend, we all of a sudden had 18 signups that came out of nowhere. We hadn't even started marketing yet. Yeah.
All right, so when you think about the conscious mind and your unconscious, think of it this way. The conscious mind is the goal setter, but your unconscious is the goal getter. Kelley was not conscious of a belief saying, I can't make money, I'm not for profit, right? But when we can figure out what those things are, get them to match the conscious mind, then we can win, because otherwise the 90% is going to win every single time, right?
Absolutely. So understanding what I was holding at a cellular level was super important. It was rooted in my cells, in my thoughts, and in every part of my unconscious. It was in my biology in so many ways, from also childhood messaging and other childhood trauma experiences that I had had.
Okay, so it was rooted in her biology. This is really important, and can we geek out together for a minute? Because beliefs, this is not just theory, this isn't just fluff, it's not just oming I'm abundant and prosperous and waiting for it to happen. Our beliefs are held in our biology. And Dr. Bruce Lipton, if you're familiar with his work, writes about this in his studies in the field of epigenetics in his book, The Biology of Belief. That's an amazing book, and I know a lot of people like it, but he also learned about the phenomenal power of our beliefs through studying people with dissociative identity disorder, or what we commonly refer to as multiple personalities. Now, here is where this gets really interesting, because dissociative identity disorder is quite often studied as a psychological condition. But what Bruce Lipton and the other psychoneuroimmunologists started doing was saying, what's going on physiologically with these people? And this is where we have some really, really cool insights. Because what he found was, he said, he explains the shifting of personalities like a radio tuning into a different station. And he said what actually happens when somebody shifts into an alternate personality is, physiologically, they have a separate EEG profile. Physiologically, their eye color can and does shift to a different eye color in the very brief amount of time that it takes to shift personalities. A scar that appears on the body in one personality from an accident vanishes when that person shifts to an alternate personality. Why? Because they didn't have the accident. Why would they have the scar? Right? Anaphylactic allergies, food sensitivities, all of these things shift. Okay, so now think about it. Beliefs are really, really powerful. And we are living at a very exciting time, where there's no shortage of incredible, extraordinary modalities to work with our beliefs at that level. We don't have to just sit and affirm hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times for years and years and years. We can work directly with the unconscious mind with the right tools.
Mm-hmm. Bessel van der Kolk, you might be familiar with that name, recently wrote a book called The Body Keeps Score. He's one of the leading experts on trauma and how trauma is held within the body.
I know a little bit about this because what brought me into this work in the first place was figuring out my own challenges around infertility, because I was told I would never, ever be able to have a baby, and that I needed a hysterectomy, both ovaries removed, and to be on hormone replacements for the rest of my life. And what was really going on with me? Oh, my body was keeping the score of abuse that happened as a teenager. And it was in doing that work that I was able to change those beliefs and lots of other ones too. Mm-hmm. Perhaps the best examples, and certainly our favorites, come from Dr. Paul Pearsall's work. Paul Pearsall is he's a physician. He studies transplant phenomena in patients, and he's worked with hundreds of different patients, half of them being heart transplants, and he studies the phenomena of what happens when somebody takes on another person's organs. So we're talking about cellular memory and memory transference.
Mm-hmm. And embodied memory. One of the stories that he shares that is fascinating is a woman named Susan, who, after her organ transplant, all of a sudden was craving things like chicken nuggets, peppers, and beer.
Beer.
There it is. And here's the thing, this was a new phenomenon, and then she kept having reoccurring dreams of who she thought might possibly be her organ donor. She did a bit of digging, did a little bit of research, and sure enough, she was able to find out that her organ donor was 18-year-old Tim, who loved, you get it, chicken nuggets, peppers, and beer.
Mm-hmm. Another patient, we'll call him Fred. Well, Fred started shouting out the name Sandy during sex, which was kind of problematic because his wife's name is Karen. Right? Now, understandable though, because his donor, Fred's widow's name was Sandra, so we can give him a pass on that one.
Yeah, totally. One of the most fascinating is about an 8-year-old girl who, after her organ transplant, was having reoccurring nightmares about her donor's, who was a 10-year-old girl, her actual murder. After having reoccurring nightmares, her parents did the right thing, took her to a psychiatrist. This psychiatrist was phenomenal in my mind because he actually decided that this young girl may be seeing actual footage through her mind's eye of this murder. Took her to the police. She gave the information. They were able to identify the murder weapon, location, and solve that murder. Fascinating.
Yeah, so beliefs are not just these fluffy things that we have to declare. We got to do our work around our beliefs and how and where they're stored. By the way, Paul Pearsall's book called The Heart's Code tells that story and some other fascinating ones. Because we all have these memories, right? And our memories are stored in our unconscious minds, and every memory has a belief attached to it. Sometimes those are really positive memories with really positive affirming beliefs. Other times, not so much, right? So this is the work that we get to examine.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, those memories and those beliefs, they can be our own from our own experiences, or they could be through stories we've heard. They could be passed down through generational stories or ancestral experiences, and they take root in our bodies. So you're asking, well, why are you telling us all of this when this is about, money, money mindset? Because money is so very rooted to our sense of survival.
Absolutely, and we all have beliefs around this. So, humor us, if you will, and help us fill in the blanks. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Money is the root of all
evil. Right? And there's no shortage of beliefs and statements and the way that we use our language around money that we can explore. And I imagine probably a lot of people here are very conscious of their language because words matter. Mm-hmm. But we all have these. And like Kelley said, they come from culture, they come from religion, they come from the economic times that we're living through. They come from family. Like it comes from everywhere. And I think that's something that we all share.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But you know what else is very closely tied to our sense of survival? Water.
So, water and money are actually very closely related, and our approach and our experiences with water and our approach and our experiences with money also closely related. think about the language that we use when we're talking about money. Cash flow,
Liquidating assets.
drowning in debt,
Inflation.
yeah. Freezing assets, the housing bubble.
Yes.
Right? There's every important term around money we can relate back to water, and this is really interesting because, like Kelley said, when we're in survival mode, if you're physically in a survival mode, what's your body's first thing that it's going to do to help you survive? Retain water. Now, money is not a thing. Money is an energy. And when I started learning this this was the master practitioner levels of our trainings, and I was like, this is really fascinating because I'm struggling with money. It's like I'm like repelling it somehow. I'm like allergic to money somehow, and I really want to have this amazing business, and I have a history with water. And so I did something, and I looked at my cycles. Now, I want to share this idea of cycles as an exercise, okay? So the law of cycles says that, we like to look at 7 to 9 year cycles. We will actually have things come back up for resolution. Freud called this the
compulsion.
Compulsion cycle, something about compulsion. I forget, and I don't have a slide. But the idea is that whatever problems we're dealing with in our lives right now, at least the big ones, there's probably a pattern to it. And not because the universe is trying to punish us, because it's coming back up because it wants to be resolved. So I took a look at my cycles around money, and I was like, well, 7 years ago, I almost drowned in Cabo. I slipped under a boat, and thankfully somebody pulled me out. And when they pulled me out, my swimsuit didn't quite come with me, and at this point there's 50 people on the beach, so I also had shame and embarrassment and this whole crazy traumatic experience around it, just to make that more fun. 7 years before that, my family's house burned down. Huge house fire while we were in it. Thankfully, everybody was okay. What does fire have to do with water? Well, it's the absence of it, and we have to use water to fight it. So I'm looking at this. And as I keep going back, there's other experiences around water, and then going back into childhood, there's experiences around alcoholism, because I come from a great Scottish-Irish family. So we have our challenges in the family history there, and alcohol also very closely related to water conflicts, because we don't just drown in debt. What do we do when we're drowning in debt? Drown our sorrows. Right? So it's all in the language that we use and all in these different relationships. So for me, it was important to go back through my personal history and then go back through family history. And I was able to go back a couple of generations and figure out where these water conflicts started. And when I did, everything shifted. And this is something that we would recommend everybody does. You don't have to do it around water. You can do a 7 to 9 year cycle around relationships, around health, around career and business. And what you do is you just take, it's 2022. And so I'm 44 today. And just what is going on in my life right now today? And then back it up 7 years. In 2015, I was 37. What was going on then? Back it up 7 years when you get to an age where you start looking at what was going on for my family. And you trace the cycles back that way, you might be amazed at what comes up for you.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing how many connections can be made. But the challenge with it is, say, for example, we have a belief that water is dangerous. That can translate into money is dangerous. When we start to think about, water being unsafe, how safe do we feel when it comes to bringing in money? These are all things that we want to consider and how they overlap and layer in when we start to look at how money is or is not showing up in our lives.
Right? Reframing my thinking around money, using water as an analogy, completely blew out any scarcity that I really had left in me. And it's because I looked at it, and I want you to imagine, we're all raised with ideas of what we're supposed to have financially. Right? Enough money stored up for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, plus for the kids, and we're supposed to have these stockpiles of it somewhere so that one day we can be happy. Now imagine if you did that with water. You would have to have acres, you'd have airplane hangars full of those massive jugs of water so that you could have it for one day when you need it. But we know we don't need that with water. We know we don't. We know that what we need with water is access to a clean source of water, which, by the way, if you look at the relationship between impoverished areas and access to clean water, we have some challenges there. I will not get started on the Indigenous peoples in Canada communities that do not have clean water, but something to think about when it comes to abundance thinking. So we need access to that source of water, and we need to be able to turn on the tap, and we need to be able to control the flow. And as soon as I was able to reframe that that was what I needed to do with my relationship with money, I needed to know that I could always create what I needed to create, have that source, and be able to turn on the tap, control the tap, and direct the flow. All of the scarcity thinking vanished.
Mm-hmm. So everybody's thinking, okay, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Like, take swimming lessons. It'll be fine. No. No, but it really is about excavating what is going on in that unconscious. The 7 to 9 year cycle that Laura just referenced is such a brilliant exercise to figure out what's going on there, right? But here's the thing. When you start to do that and you start to move in the direction that you want to go, something's going to happen. And it's something that we call upper limits.
Because you could be doing all the right things, you can be clearing the beliefs, you can be doing the work, so what are the things that can get in the way, right? Because how many of you know you've been in a place that's like, I'm doing all the right things, why is this not working? Mm-hmm. So there's a few reasons, right? Number one, as Kelley said, upper limits. Gay Hendricks wrote about upper limits problems in his book, The Big Leap, which is like a everybody needs to read that book if you haven't. But he said, think of it like a thermostat. We all have an internal set point. We all have a setting for what we're willing to receive, in love, in success, in finances. So really this work is about just nudging that thermostat up. And sure, we can crank it up, but it's really just about readjusting that thermostat and readjusting our set point. Because when we hit the upper limit, and this is all explained in brain science and the activity of the amygdala too, when we hit where we're calibrated for, that's where self-sabotage comes in. Mm-hmm. And that is where upper limits problems show up. So it's important to know, how do you do your upper limits problems? Who do you do them with?
Yeah, for me, it's my family.
Yes.
It's always my family.
Shockingly, Kelley's family will have major crises every time we're about to level up. Right?
Yes,
so
without fail. Without fail. Yes, I said without fail, for sure, for sure. Yeah. The other thing that we want you all to keep an eye on is something that we call secondary gain. Secondary gain says that it's when the gain of having the problem outweighs the pain of having the problem. One of the beliefs that I picked up at a young age, and my mother said this in jest, I don't know why, it just like zoop, went right in. The message that she said was, keep a man poor and he can never leave. Yeah. And so guess what? Guess why I couldn't bring money in? Because I love my partner. I didn't want him to go anywhere. So I could not allow myself to bring in money, because if I did, then he might leave. Be very mindful of what this potential secondary gain is. What's the job that the problem is doing? Because problems show up for us to learn something from them, that deeper part of an unmet need, okay? We all have human needs. We have needs for belonging. We have needs for connection. And we will have those needs be met, whether we do that with willpower and volition, or they will be met unconsciously through drama, chaos, and other ways that it can show up in our lives. But they will seek to be met.
Right. So if the need that is getting met is more important than the goal that you've set, the need will win until you figure out how to get that need met consciously and deal with the beliefs that are attached to it. We've worked with several clients who have a similar form of this problem, but I'll give you one example. Client comes into training, she's running her coaching business, has invested tens of thousands of dollars in business coaching and business mastery and all the funnels and all the marketing and all the photo shoots and all the things. She cannot make money, and it doesn't make sense. So we look at secondary gain, and what we find is a childhood where she basically had to raise herself, fend for herself, care for herself, very little safety, very little security, and actually a lot of danger. But now, as an adult woman with amazing, business potential, she is with her partner and their children, and her partner is covering things. She's going, well, yeah, I guess that I'm continually reassuring myself that I will be cared for, I will be loved, I will be safe, and the way that that reassurance is coming is by sabotaging in my business, because when that happens, these needs are met. So this is secondary gain is pretty profound. It takes a little bit of CSI investigator into our belief systems, and it takes asking ourselves the hard questions, what's the payoff? What is the payoff for having the problem? Who snaps to attention? Who shows up for me when I do? And certainly when it comes to money, who's going to judge me? Will I still have those relationships when I'm at that goal? What will my friends think? What will my families think? Will I be gossiped about?
Yes, 100%. All right, so back to ask, believe, receive. So, number one, ask. What do you want? What would you want if you did not have to be unhappy about not getting it? What would you want? What would you want?
Say that again?
Oh, for sure. What would you want if you did not have to be unhappy about not getting it? Give yourself permission to dream. And if you had no attachment, if there was nothing running around worth and worthiness, what would you want?
Okay. Believe. Right? Like we said, a lot of the beliefs that get in the way are unconscious. If we can name it, that's not it, because it's not conscious to us yet. One of the best ways to figure out what limiting beliefs are getting in the way is to ask yourself, what do I think other people think about me? Not on your good days, but when you're in your stuff. What do I think other people are thinking about me? Because we live in this perception of our reality, and we're not who we think we are. We're not who I think somebody else thinks I am or you are. We are what we think other people think we are. So we'll often task clients to say, make a list. What's the mind read? What do you think people are thinking about you that's not positive? And whatever comes up, those are the beliefs we got to work on. That's the stuff to clear.
And finally, receive. And we want to invite you all to receive today. What we would like to offer each and every one of you is a block clearing quantum time release group session. It's the exact same modality that I did when I made that call to Laura. It's a few hours. We're doing it in December. If it's something that you feel like you would want to participate on and participate in, and you're open to receiving it, we are doing this for all of you. Come and see me at some point. I have a QR code that you can scan to register. And if you miss me by any chance, we'll make sure that that information goes out in an email to each and every one of you.
All right. So thank you. Thank you. And yes, let's
enjoy the rest of the event, everyone. Thank you.